Hey, what's up everyone? Yellowhat and weekend one of Crimson Vow Standard is in the books. So I figured I would walk you through what did well this weekend in the three big tournaments that happened on Arena, as well as show you every card from Crimson Vow that saw play in the best finishing decks in each of these tournaments. And you'll see number one will blow your mind. No, it won't actually, but might have a couple surprises in the top five. Anyways, let's get into it. You had three big tournaments this weekend on Arena. You had the Hooglandia Open was 82 entrants. You had the Croquis Tournament was 424 entrants, and the biggest one, the Red Bull, had 1,055 players. It was free and there was decent cash prizes. I'm going to show you every card that was played out of Crimson Vow in the best finishing decks. I took the top 15 in Red Bull tournament. I took the top 8 for the Croquis tournament, and I took the top 6 for the Hoogland tournament. So I kind of looked at the records. Some of the structure, especially the Red Bull structure, is a little weird, but I figured that kind of made sense. So first, you had the one-ofs. You had the one-of Wedding Announcement was in someone's sideboard. Not the most exciting card, lots of good free drops in white. So not a big surprise that that card didn't really break through. You had one copies of Vampire's Vengeance. I believe it was someone playing blue-red that had one copy in the sideboard. That was a little disappointment for me. Vamps did not do especially well this weekend, and no one finished really high with the deck. I've played the deck some more since, and I haven't been super impressed. I think it's fine, but nothing special. We'll have to see what happens with that deck. He had one copy of First for Discovery that was in one of the Is It lists that someone was playing. I think it was actually the winning list from one of those tournaments that had First in it. Hero's Downfall, that was one copy of someone's sideboard. Not the most efficient removal spell anymore, and not a ton of Planeswalker to kill. It's mostly creatures, so they're paying a tiny bit too much mana for just a Dark Vanishing. Reckless Impulse, that was a couple copies in one of the red aggressive decks. So that card's basically light up the stage for one more or one less mana depending. By invitation only, that was a one of, actually, also in someone's sideboard, I believe. Alpac Piper, that was a surprise. I didn't expect to see that card see any play at all. A couple copies in someone's deck. Guessing that card was not great for them, but you never know. You had Everbrook Caretaker, that was a couple copies in one of the green decks. Card could take over the mid game, honestly, mid to late game. I feel like if you play it as a Huntmaster and you trigger it at once, you're probably going to win the game, potentially in a green mirror match, creature mirror match to break the board stall. Circle of Confinement, that was sideboard cards. You'll see that was another removal spell from Crimson Vow that saw a lot more play than the Circle of Confinement. You had Fleeting Spirits, decent card, I guess, against removal maybe. And First Strike ability can come up in combat. Doesn't look like the worst creature, but only one player decided to play the card. Same for Ollenbach Escort. I think it was only one of the mono-white players that decided to play that card. Mono-white by the deck, that was the deck that did probably the most played deck, and also the deck that did the best or plays the most players in the top finishes. Anyways, 10 players were playing white. And if you remember, I took top 15, top 8, and top 6, so that's 29. So over a third of the top finishing players were playing white, but it was probably also a lot of white players. It had to be the most played deck by far. You had Welcoming Vampire, a card I didn't expect to see play. I don't even know what it does. 2/3 flying. Whenever one or more other creatures with power 2 or less enter the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. I'm not exactly sure who you would want that against. It's kind of grindy, but it dies. Everyone has a ton of removal. Doesn't have a come into play. Didn't see a ton of play though. There's a few copies of Syncopate. I've never been a big fan of the card, but I was talking to Andrew Cuneo, and he said he kind of liked it in his blue-black control deck. card saw a tiny bit of play in the blue control decks. Hamlet Vanguard, not exactly the best to play in standard. Maybe I'll see more play in some of the other formats, the formats where you get collected company. But only one player chose to play Vanguard in a white-green deck. Volatile Arsonist, I believe maybe that was a Jund deck. One player decided to put that card in their deck. A couple players decided to play Wash Away in their control list. Card is sweet, can help you win a tempo war maybe against Memory Deluge. Countering Memory Deluge for 1 mana can be pretty big. Countering Spells of Iteration, countering maybe some Disturb spells. Not the greatest, but some utility. You had the Archghoul of Thraben. We had one zombie deck do well, so that card showed up. I think in a dedicated zombie deck, that card's decent. I've played against it once, and it was pretty annoying, so not totally surprised to see it show up in zombies. Edgar Charm Groom. You would think Vamps. No, it was actually played for value in the winning list from the Crokies tournament, I believe. It was basically white-black control, and Edgar was just there as body / win condition / annoying card. You play it, you don't care if it dies, you don't care if you dies to your own sweeper, it just come back, gives you some tokens, and just really annoying win condition. It is a legend, so we're playing 4 copies. Maybe a little sketchy, but worked out. Hellstinger, couple players decided to play that card, I believe, as well in that white-black winning deck list. Headless Rider, that was in the zombie deck, was also playing the Archghoul. We saw a couple decks, I want to say, using the black-green land. Path of Peril, I believe that was a blue-black control deck that was flashing white just for path. Basically, they were playing a few white-black dual lands, white-blue dual lands, just so they could occasionally play the Cleave. Sorin the Mirthless. Still no Vam decks, obviously, but someone decided to play Sorin in their midrange deck. You saw an aggro deck was Gatekeeper. I've tried that card a tiny bit in Vampire. It doesn't seem too good to me. Flameblast Bolt was mostly used as a cheap removal in the Izzet Epiphany decks, as well as a Braid. Now we're getting in, that was in the range of 6-7 copies total in these 29 decks. Sundown Pass, that was a 1 white-red player. You had Prowler that actually saw a bit of play. I think the players who played Prowler decided to play it over Kazandu Mammoth. That seems like a weird and not very good choice to me, but I haven't really seen the card in action yet. You also had Voice of the Blessed, 2 copies, still that Cleric deck, so 8 copies total. Obviously the card's pretty pushed as far as these cards goes, just harder to cast but better at Johnny's Pridemate. You also had Shattered Sanctum, bunch of white-black decks, as well as that blue-black deck splashing a tiny bit of white. And now we're getting in the cards that card I didn't expect to see. You've got Chariot on 4, but I think some players decided to play that card and Chariot. I even want to say someone played that card over Chariot in the main. But yeah, I think that was 9 copies total for the Louisville Oddity. And now I believe we're getting to our top, I think the next top 6 actually. That's Ascendant Pack Leader, that was 10 copies. There's actually a green deck that decided not to play the Pack Leader, I believe. 5th most played card, Hullbreaker Horror. I didn't expect that card to see that much play, but you had players play as many as 4 copies in the main deck. That was the Seth Manfield build of Izzet Epiphany. And it wasn't actually Epiphany, it was just Izzet Horror, really. I was watching some of his games. It seems like he was getting stuck with that card in hand a lot. I'm guessing he would maybe not play 4 copies again if he had a do-over, but card looked pretty good. I think it could be maybe a little bit exploitable if people know that's the way you're building your control decks and you don't have something like Epiphany and Iteration to copy it. All of a sudden it becomes really appealing to just play a bunch of Doomblade, Infernal Graph, Soul Shatter, and just kind of deal like that with your big dummy. But the card does seem strong, pretty strong against green, pretty strong against white, if you get to cast it. And in the mirror control matches can be countered, obviously pretty nice as well. Then you had Stormcarved Coast. 24 copies. I'll let you guess how many is it decks. That's 6 times 4, 24. So yeah, six players who played is it either Epiphany or Horror, but basically these blue-red decks with the 7 mana payoffs. And obviously they were paying 4 copies each of that dual land. The dual land's amazing. The slow lands are really, really good. Next, the removal spell, a card I didn't expect to see. I guess it makes sense. It was mostly in sideboards. Some people decided to play a copy or 2 in their main deck, but that was Valor Stance. That was actually 26 copy of Valor Stance total. So I guess the white decks average about 2 copies because there was the 10 white decks, but there was also some white-red decks and a few white-green decks. So Valor Stance, so a decent amount of play. Next, that was kind of a card that surprised me that a lot of play. It makes sense. Once again, obviously it's going to be a white card and it's a new 1-drop. Hopeful Initiate. 1/2 for a white. It has training, meaning that you attack with that creature and another one, and the other creature has higher power. The Initiate trains and it gets a +1/+1 counter, and then it has an ability, a white and 2, remove 2 of these counters. From amongst creature you control, actually it's any creature, so the tokens the +1/+1 counters you're putting on your creatures with Aspirant, Luminarch Aspirant, you get to use as well, and destroy target artifact or enchantment. That would be Chariot, that would be maybe the Celestus in some of the control decks, and maybe a Maul of the Skyclave. Not a ton of target, but I guess the 1-drops are just lacking in white, so people decided to play the Initiate. Even though I believe the deck that did the best this weekend, an impressive 13-0 run by Rafael Quinta Pozzo in the Red Bull tournament, did not play the Initiate. So 7 players out of the 10 decided to play it, not Rafael. And number 1, you've probably guessed it. It's not a surprise. It's a card I actually had ranked 1 over the dual lands in my very, very initial set review. As the most impactful card for Standard out of Crimson Vow, it's Thalia, Guardian of Traven. No surprise there. I believe 38 copies total of the card played, and a lot of players playing 3 copies in the main, 1 in the sideboard. Everyone of these white decks had at least 3 copies. You had, obviously some of the other decks. That's why you've got such a high number of Thalia. But yeah, no surprise there. Most played card. White was the most played deck, and there's actually not that many white cards for the deck out of Crimson Vow. Even though you could argue, already, a couple 2 or 3 new cards is a lot. So yeah, you have it the most impactful card out of Crimson Vow in weekend 1 of Standard. Thalia, Guardian of Traven. White did super well. It was the most played deck, but it also had a high win rate. So yeah, hope that was insightful, useful, that you enjoyed it. If you did, obviously, please leave a like. If you haven't done so, you can subscribe to the channel for more content. And I'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.